Welcome to All Things Real Estate. And today we're sharing divorce and relationship scenarios involving real estate and providing insights on how to navigate those very unique and stressful challenges. Now we're joined by Sophia D. Bryan, Esquire, managing attorney at law at the Law Boss firm based in Kingston, Jamaica. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. You.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Why ownership? I didn't know something.
It is
exciting stuff and stressful stuff, right? Oh my gosh. Now, wow. Now let's talk. The house that love built. Who gets the family home and so on. It's interesting when two people come together and you come together initially in love. You're excited. You want to build something together. You do that and then it breaks apart. Yeah? Who gets the home? Who gets the family home?
Well, so it's a matter of different things are considered by the court. But once you are married to somebody, there is an expectation that things are going to be divided equally. But then the matter can get complicated if, for example, the property was inherited before the marriage. One party may have contributed more than the other. The marriage may have been of a short duration, so less than 5 years. So the court will look into those things when making a determination as to who should get what and if it's a 50-50 split, as is customary, or it's going to be different.
Okay, so here's a scenario, yeah? The couple is married. They're no divorcing, obviously. Both contributed to the mortgage payments, but the title is only in one somebody's name. How'd that go?
And that does happen.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
When you're in love, you do all sorts of things.
So, as I said, there is an expectation that, or presumption that it's 50-50. But if, for instance, the marriage was not a long marriage, then the court is going to look at financial contributions, and then the person whose name is not on the title, they may want to make an argument that they should get back what they would have invested. But if it was a long duration, for instance, then they're gonna ask for 50%, regardless of whose name is on the title. So don't think that you're being slick by only having one name.
Okay, good.
Yes.
You're not going to leave the person out in the cold. It does make things a little bit more simpler, because then you can offer to buy out the other person since their name is not on there anyway.
Okay, now mine is common law chaos, right? Which we know the common law ruling in Jamaica and all these things. Now we live together, but who owns what? So, 10 years of love, yeah? We're together for 10 years. We're in a jointly improved home, but we never got married, right? One party is now leaving and wants compensation. Is the 10 years of love worth anything in the court, firstly?
Right. So you said everybody know about common law, but not really.
Well, yeah.
So
true. Yeah,
so under Jamaican law, when you have been living with someone for 5 or more years, you are deemed in a spousal relationship. So that's common law.
Right.
So it's almost as though you're seen as a married couple in the eyes of the law, right? And so the rules that apply as if you were married apply in that particular scenario.
Okay.
And so, yes, there's no marriage certificate, but then you can still go and make an application to the court for a proper division of assets. And so they're going to look at the fact that you were together for 10 years, but living is that can also be complicated. Was it a visiting relationship? Was the person overseas and coming home and visiting once a month? So it could be argued whether or not you guys were actually
living.
Yes.
Which there was a case of sometime last year where a person argued that they weren't in a relationship while the person swore that they were together and there was a child involved. But the court ruled that it wasn't a common law situation.
Oh, because it was more visiting?
Yeah.
Man.
Oh.
Gosh.
Enough time. I'm telling you, son, I do it on the cell phone. I always tell them.
Yeah.
I've always been saying that. I always son, I do it on the cell phone.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Man.
Jeez.
And so just to, piggyback on that point, so the court is going to ask for affidavit evidence from people in the community that can speak to
the
whether
fact that
or
you're
not.
together.
Yes.
What a sinting.
So it's not just your word being taken for it. You're going to have to get people involved in your business.
Like I said, were they really together?
Yeah. How much time I see man come my house? Was he, there every day?
Yeah.
Is this car parked there every day? Like, is he leaving, to and from?
Yo, this is
Or you just see him
madness.
on weekends?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Father God,
Now let's talk a bit about inherited land turned marital property. I'm pretty interested in this one. It was in my name before we got married. Can I still lose half? So say for example, one spouse inherited land before marriage, right? But during the marriage, they built a house with joint funds, or even, she inherited a beautiful, expansive mansion. He moved in with her, and there were renovations and stuff. And them spend them look of money and fix it up
Yeah.
together, and them live there. Now that it's over. But remember, she inherited it.
I love that you said she, because women tend to get themselves in this problem all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does it work?
We just love to build.
Bill, can I tell you?
Bobby the builder.
So it's a two. The question has to be answered in two prongs. So inheritance. It depends on the circumstances under which the person inherited the land. So somebody can inherit a life interest in property, meaning that you have the right to live there until the duration of your life, and when you've passed on, then it goes to somebody else. Or if the land was a part of a trust, for instance, and the trustee has to, there is something that says, okay, you can't give it to anybody else, nobody can have an interest. So it depends on the circumstances under which the individual inherited it, because it doesn't mean that they inherited it outright. However, a house is a fixture on the land, and so the value of the house can be treated separate from the value of the land itself. And so that individual now will have to demonstrate to the court that they can be separated, find out what the value of the property is, and then make an application for division of assets. All being well that it's a bona fide relationship or a marriage, then they have the right to do that. So just because somebody inherited something, it doesn't mean they inherited it outright.
Wow, that's interesting. And I'm just thinking about that and thinking of ways in which we can probably protect our children if we're handing things down to them. What are some of the best ways to, put together the contract? Because when you say, okay, so my next living relative or closest to me should get this property, and then they should then pass it to their child and to their child and so on.
Yeah, so that is language that I've come across when I'm helping with the administration of estates. So I think that's a great way to preserve generational wealth, because then nobody can take it upon themselves to sell it, or not to get too complicated here, but a caveat could be lodged on the property and citing that particular clause in the person's will to say you only have a life interest and it passes on to your grandchild or whomever. Yeah.
That's very good.
Which
The
is-
man make enough for them people, yeah.
Right. So
A lot of
if
these
you-
gold digging people.
Right.
So if you have a poor spouse that can't buy you out, I don't know what to say, because you're gonna just have to treat that as a loss.
Yeah.
Jeez. Right, so let's talk secret sale. Yeah. So the ex sold the property without telling me. Your ex just sold the house. Now what? So here's the scenario, okay? So after the separation, but before the official divorce, right? One person, more than likely the woman, more than likely the woman are gonna do this. So that party sells a jointly owned home or land. What happens next?
All right, so you have two types of ownership, joint tenancy and tenancy in common. So with joint tenancy, the law sees both parties as owning. So there's no way it could have been sold if it was
It was owned by both persons.
Yeah, because then it would be fraud.
Right.
But if it was a tenancy in common situation, the person could sell their share. They could find some way to go around selling their share without the other person knowing. But then the court would have to decide in that's a complicated mess, but somebody's gonna end up unhappy in that situation. The buyer, once somebody makes a bona fide purchase, they don't business about what was happening in the background, and so those persons would have to work it out. But the person that purchased, it wouldn't have nothing to do with them. They'd have to work that out. in front of the court, behind the scenes.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
we're gonna go for a quick break. We're gonna still be here with Sophia D. Bryan in Esquire and managing attorney at law. We're talking about all things real estate, but I do have a personal question just
Yes, please,
crossed my
write
mind.
it down,
man.
please.
So we'll take a break real quick, please.
Find your perfect Kia model today. Visit our showrooms to join the movement that inspires. The temperature brought to you by Kia is...
It is 31 degrees Celsius here in Kingston and 30 out west in Montego Bay. So before we go into the next question, okay, scenario that happened to someone.
Someone? Yeah?
Okay.
Not you.
No. Okay, so Honi and I were married, yes. We bought a home together, all of the addition, things like that.
As
both
we
of us,
should,
right?
as we
right.
should.
We've separated, but not legally divorced.
Oh no.
Yeah. Only be got foreign, so me know of the house, right? I'm living in the home. We've shared kids together, but the one of the putting them gonna foreign too with only be. Okay. We've then divorced years after. Then I remarry and I marry Natalie. So Natalie is my new wife. She's now in the home.
Me did see that coming. Me did see it long
You know,
time.
remember Natalie. So remember only be and the kids. They're in
Yeah.
foreign. I still have the home. I now marry Natalie.
And Natalie moving with you.
Moving with me now in the new house, right? In the home. I pass away. Who is the owner?
How long before you did?
Like years after, years
Like
after.
you fit them big now?
Yeah, man. All the kids with Honeybee, they're grown adults. Natalie and I, we also share kids together. And now I pass away. But the house is still in Honeybee's name.
Yeah.
Who gets the
gets
house?
it? Is it Honeybee or Natalie, who's now my new wife?
Right. So whenever somebody passes, it sounds complicated, but it happens, right? There is a presumption that your spouse is the one that's gonna administer your estate, right? So the new wife, Natalie, it would be incumbent on her to make an application to be the administrator. So the rule says once, if there's no will to the contrary, the assets are divided 50-50. So the first situation that would have happened, presuming that it would have been an equal split there, 50-50, the dead husband, his 50% would belong to Natalie and the children. So it's like the children would be, at the end of the day, the new wife might not have a substantial interest, even though she would be the one responsible for ironing things out. So the old wife, she's still entitled to her share, which would have been 50%, clearly. But then that other 50% that the husband would have been entitled to,
Should go to the new
it's going to
wife.
go to the new wife, and it's going to be split among the new wife and the children. So in a situation like that, somebody's going to have to buy out somebody.
Yeah, because
Because Honeybee, you would be entitled to your share from before, unless the new wife makes an application to say that there was adverse possession, depending on how long she lived in the house with the husband.
what that mean? What adverse possession mean?
Meaning, so if our legal system is influenced by common law, right? So it means that law should not be left idly. And so if land is left idly, it's somebody has to go and take possession or take responsibility for it and maintain and upkeep it. It doesn't matter what the title says. So if the old wife went about her business, didn't care about the house,
Yeah, 'cause it sound like she
she
not really come back.
almost gave up possession
Of
the property and her 50%. And so if the new wife gets a good lawyer to make that application, in my opinion, I think she would be
She
successful.
could get the property.
And might end up getting 50% whole outright. And then the children would get the other 50%.
60.
And then I said, donkey say, hold on, labeling.
Right.
Okay,
So
All right, let's talk a bit about this here now. Parents paid, now what? The gift or the loan dilemma. Your in-laws paid for your house. How do they get it back when the marriage ends? The one spouse's parents helped with the down payment on a home. Divorce looms. Was it a gift to both or a loan to one?
Oh, I like that one.
I mean, listen, for somebody to warm at the down payment of the house, isn't that just like pettiness?
Very petty.
Two
Very
become one. That's what
petty.
marriage says. Two
We were
become
both your
one.
children.
I
Yes.
know which of the parents gave that loan. Are the woman parents? Me not ask. Woman parents.
Why you
because
feel so?
Me not the woman parents do it and the father say, hello, no, the
yeah.
man never good for you more about money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
the
I
woman-
mean, the
woman
reality
It
is
could be the boy parents.
highly unlikely.
Yes.
You cannot say so. You know, so
Sophia know where I'm going.
somebody, come on, Sophia. You
Yeah,
know, so
man.
some of them boy and them mother, them go like say. You understand?
No, the mother is gonna be like, no, you're taking over my son and my money tree, so I don't Mrs. But even wealthy mothers can be like that. But anyways, that's anecdotal stories. So the parents are getting back nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what?
You know, waste your time on soup, but you're not getting back nothing.
Okay. Let's talk about this one. And I actually have seen so many of these in movies and on Judge Judy. The hidden property play, right? So undisclosed assets in divorce. So what happens when your spouse tries to ghost you on the property registrar, right? So one partner suspects the other has hidden real estate or undeclared rental income. What happens there?
You pray that the woman doesn't have a sensible lawyer that's not going to go to National Land Agency, do a search to verify if the person has any property in their name. So you pray for that. However, upon, if it's found, you're going to have to give it up. You're going to have to give it up 50-50. So once the other party can demonstrate that it's a bona fide marriage, especially if it's, a marriage of a certain duration, how are you going to say to the court that the person isn't entitled to anything? That's the risk you take when you get married.
That's
the
something about
yeah. So I mean, but just to add facts here that don't exist. But if somebody's going to take the time to do that, perhaps maybe they're business savvy and probably the property registered in like a business name or somebody's name. However, if it can be shown that you are the true owner and it's just a facade, then you're gonna have to give up.
So you're telling me, right? We get married, right? You've got tons of property. Some of it's in your business name, yada. I only know about a portion, yes, because maybe you feel like you're trying to protect yourself by not telling me about everything you own, as well as probably you never get to go through everything you own because it's so many of them. We break up, it's over, we're having a divorce, right? Boom, it comes down to splitting everything. True, me don't know about them other property there. I only get this. And then I find out about those. I can get half of those too.
Yeah, there is a window to go. There is a window though. Yes. Once it's within a certain time frame, there is a window of opportunity though. So when a divorce proceeding start, you have up to a year to make an application to the court for the division of assets. So if after the first court order and then a year later you discover that there are some things or they weren't being completely honest to the court, you can open up back the case and make an application, especially if you believe that all of the trauma and drama you go through warrants you getting more.
Everything. So now we
By
can't
the way, this applies to both men and women. We're seeing this in the media now. Offset is asking.
I was just gonna bring them
Spousal
out.
support.
Which he's,
Spousal
you know what I
support.
mean? Out of his mind. But it happens. But men and women are not, are both susceptible to this.
Because
sort of thing.
Halle Berry had to pay her ex-husband back in the day spousal support as well, and it was this whole thing. I mean, one whole heap of- how much
Mary J. Blige as well.
Yeah.
Thousand
Yeah.
years of Mary J.
Yeah.
Blige if you had to play this man.
Yeah.
I mean, say, how do you end up in a situation like that? Is it simply because you are earning more and the court knows this?
Yes, so earning more, but also the type of lifestyle.
Yes.
So it's incumbent on you, the person that's earning more. You have to, once it's in your power, you are supposed to help to maintain the lifestyle of this person up until, they find another spouse. And obviously they're not
Box
going to
cover
find another spouse.
until they find one exposed?
Yeah, which they
We
will
never
not.
find no spouse.
Precisely.
I just say go.
Precisely.
We never gonna find a spouse.
But in Jamaica, though, it's not a free-for-all situation. You have to come to the court to demonstrate what your expenses are, right? You have to show that you are not capable of providing for
yourself.
Or maintaining the lifestyle that you're used to?
Yeah, and the reality is that is a solid argument, because if you, expose me to caviar and lobster
Yes.
and
flights to Dubai and Italy
Yes, you have to help with some of that
on a private jet.
Yeah, but
Until we can find.
until
I can't find it in a side side. Yeah, so that's for those pay
Yo, this is crazy because what people were saying with Cardi B and Offset is Offset cheated on her, right? You know, and that's what's cited as reason for the
Yeah,
divorce and so on and so
yeah.
forth. So he shouldn't be able to ask for that. But she's earning more than her net worth is more than his. It's outrageous.
I think it's so if that scenario were playing out in Jamaica, he wouldn't get anything because the reality he has the capacity more
Enough.
than the average person to be able to look after himself.
like he's
Right.
still in
To
his
be able to look after
millions.
his- Yeah.
What a
Yeah, so-
Anis.
Wait. Well, if you introduce me to the caviar, I'm not. You understand the caviar I want.
Precisely.
I now go back to tin mackerel, caviar I want, caviar I'm gonna get. You understand? That's why sometimes bury within your tax bracket. But hey,
Listen, it
Hey.
is facts.
Mom
It is
always say it.
facts.
Yeah.
Because
I've always
then
been
if
saying
you
it.
split, there's no pressure on
Yeah.
you to support the other person to
Yeah.
that extent anymore. The most you might have to do is help them find a work.
and that's why some of the rich still marry
Yeah.
the rich because
Lifestyle is a hell of a thing,
It
because
is.
some Diddy's personal assistant, the one that was in court too, talking about why she went back to work for him after all the abuse and all the essay and everything, because of the lifestyle. Like she couldn't go from working with P Diddy, the biggest music mogul in the
to just a
world,
regular
Yeah,
to
job.
working at Target.
Yeah.
The life, she was
Yeah.
flying off she went on vacation with Rihanna in France.
Yeah.
And the reality is she would have been blackballed. Because
Yes.
How do
She
you
did.
how do you leave employment with somebody like that?
Exactly.
The people are gonna be like, why? And so for somebody
She
to
couldn't
take you
find
up,
work.
yeah, they would be taking a risk because they would be jeopardizing the relationship they had with him
Yes.
and his associates. And so it's a very real thing.
Absolutely. Phew, okay, so the final one. Okay. Let us do rental property, right? So after the split, can you still be business partners after your love life tanks? So a couple owns a rental property that generates income. Yes, it's a store, a clothing store, whatever. Now post divorce, one wants to sell, but the other wants to keep it and manage it. What's going to happen there?
All right, so in a situation like that, the court is going to look at what the status quo was of the relationship. And so it's not the court's business to be unreasonable. And where people are being unreasonable, it might not work for them. So there is a mediation process that couples do go through before the final court order where the division of assets are concerned. And so perhaps they can come to an arrangement that one party buys out the other over time. Because chances are, the issue is big, they can't afford it.
Yes.
So there will be some sort of arrangement there. And I don't see the court not facilitating something like that, or it just goes on the market and the person hustle up them dollars and try and buy it back. Yeah.
And it's the same thing would apply in a common law situation.
Yes, 5 or living together for 5
Living
or
together
more
for
years.
5 or more years. You
Yeah.
can prove that we've been doing that. And we both buy. Do you recommend people doing that, though, if they're not married and they live together and they decide that they want to?
If you're gonna get it in writing, if you're willing to get it in writing, get a contract in place and treat that particular situation as a business transaction, I don't see the issue, but people are not gonna do that.
Yeah.
That's the reality. They want the freedom to blur the lines, and so there's this thing about intention to create legal relations in law. That's why couples generally don't make good business partners, because the assumption of the court is you're not going to be held to the same standard
True.
as if it was a stranger.
Wow.
True.
Whoa,
Wonderful.
I've learned a lot.
I've learned so much.
I've learned a lot.
Listen, I've enjoyed this interaction immensely, Sophia.
How can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
Yes, so thelawbossfirm.com is our website, 9907313, 9907313. WhatsApp is available, direct calls. Somebody's always available to take your call or reply to your message via our website.
Love that. Well,
All
thank
right.
you so much. That was attorney at law Sophia D. Bryan. And that was All Things Real Estate. We're going to do this every Wednesday
Every
in the
Wednesday,
month of
guys,
June.
prepare no questions.
Send them in, man. Send them
Yes.
in. You understand?
Yes.
It was a fantastic half an hour.
Thank you,
Wow,
guys.
time runs off so fast.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to go to a break. This is the EZONE right here on Nationwide 90 FM.